stretch your hands out because today we're gonna get squishy. Hi eye shiners and eye shine parents. Welcome back to our third online art camp class. I'm teacher Kara and I love to stretch my imagination and make amazing things with my hands. Do you like to make amazing things with your hands too? Not all our great ideas will fit on a flat sheet of paper. So for today's art adventure, we will learn how to make paper clay. Paper clay is like a form of paper mache, but it is more 3D. That means you can build it up and form it. You can dry it out, just like paper mache, and it will become rock hard. You can sand it so that it becomes really smooth. You can also paint on it. So today, we're not just gonna learn how to make paper clay. We're also gonna look into what are different substitutes we can use for the materials that we'll need. That way, as eyeshine artists, we never feel limited by what's already there. Are you ready to get started? So the first one we'll need is a nice big bowl. Make sure that it's a bowl that is heat safe. That means it can take really hot liquids. So a thick bowl or a metal bowl or even a kitchen pot will be just fine. So I'll set it aside over here. And next, a second bowl with a strainer. This will be for picking out the extra liquid from our paper clay when it's a pulpy mixture. Let's bring out a spoon, a good spoon that has a long stem so that when the liquid is hot, we can be very far from the hot liquids. And don't forget, a very important rag for cleanups. We also need a plastic bag or a resealable container for your paper clay when it's done, and then we can keep it in the fridge. We will also need help from our eyeshine parents because we will be handling hot water. So we need freshly boiled water, which I had prepared about 3.5 cups of water, and that was just right for my activity today. But you can prepare more if you have a bigger water jug. For our paper, we can look around the house and get really creative. See if you can find some cool recyclables, like maybe reading materials that you no longer need, or scratch paper that you're finished with. I also find old notebooks that are 2 years old and are not important anymore. Those are good papers to recycle. Old newspapers work really well, except newspapers, not everybody has them anymore. But one thing I find that everyone would have are brown paper bags. So that's what I'll be using for today's paper clay activity. Paper bags are really handy because they tear really easily. So what are we looking for when we're looking for recycling paper? It's paper that is not glossy. That means it should not be shiny. The shiny paper has a tendency to not take the water very well. So we want paper that will tear really easily and that it's not also shiny. We also will need some glue. Now you can use this as your glue. Using white glue is a very good material because making paper clay out of white glue will make sure that your paper clay will last about 2, maybe even 3 weeks in the refrigerator. But a cheaper option would also be to use gawgaw or starch or even flour. So instead of using the glue, we can just sprinkle this on. This is a cheaper option as well. And if you're making paper clay in super big batches because you have a really big project or sculpture to make, then this is a good material to have. The last material that we need is salt. So we need salt that will help make our paper clay keep for a longer time, especially when it takes time for it to dry out to prevent molds from growing. So salt is a really good material that we'll just be sprinkling on while we're almost finished making our paper clay. And that's it. Let's get started. We need our brown piece of our brown paper bag. And then we're going to open up the paper bag so we can see how much paper this paper bag can give us. This is a really big sheet of paper. Let me break it into smaller pieces so it's easier to handle. So when you're tearing paper, you always look for the breaks. If there's already a break there, then good. If not, you could just make one. So I just made a small break in the paper. And then that's the part where I'm going to pull apart. And you'll notice that it just likes to slide where you break the paper. So now we have a smaller sheet of paper. It's easier to work when it's smaller so that we can hold it and we don't get so tired. I'm going to be making some strips. So I'm going to tear a bit here, and then I'm going to pull apart the paper and make a nice long strip. Let's make another two. So now that we have a couple of strips, I'm going to put them together so that I can make them even smaller. So if it takes a little time to make, you can also ask other people in your family to help out. This is a great time for us to start telling stories and talking about our favorite things while we tear together. So what we need is a whole lot of paper pulp. So I'm going to speed up this paper tearing so that you can see how it looks like when we have a really lot of paper to begin. Now with all this beautiful paper, let's put it into our bowl. See how much of this we will need. We're going to be pouring in the hot water. So I poured in a little first to let the paper start to break down. You see it's already starting to break down here. So first it looked like a lot of paper that we tore up. But you'll notice that the paper is going to start to get squished together. Let's add some more water. So be very, very careful when you're handling the hot water. So you don't want to splat it around and then it will go to your skin and it's going to hurt. So be very, very gentle and always make sure that you have a parent that's helping you for this step. So I'll just add a little bit more. And now we need to let this soak for about 24 hours, one whole day. So I'm just going to set this aside and I'm going to come back to it tomorrow. So we waited 24 hours and our paper clay now looks a little bit different. As you'll see, it's starting to look a little bit like oatmeal. And it still separates from the water, but it pretty much absorbed all the water that we put yesterday. So today what we're going to do is, if you still would like to make it smaller, you can shred it up with a fork or even get your hands in there and try to tear some of those pulps apart. Or we can already just strain it and make it into clay, which is what we're going to do right now. So to make this into our paper clay, I'm going to make some space here and get another bowl. See, I have another big bowl. It doesn't need to be a heat-proof bowl anymore because it's just for straining. And on top of that, I have my strainer. And we're going to be pouring this whole thing into our strainer like that. Let's just try and get everything in there. It's kind of like cooking, except we can't eat what we're making. So pour in all that squishy pulp. So if you like playing with the materials, this is a really good fun activity to do because the paper pulp feels so good and squishy on our hands. So now I'm going to start to strain and press it through. So I think it's time to get my hands in. And it feels good. I can now start to gather it into a nice little ball. See? And try to squeeze out as much of the liquid as I can. It feels like a good material because when I press it, it stays. Yeah. And get our mixing bowl back. And I'll start to break it apart. It's time to add in our glue and our salt. See? Super fast, right? I'm just breaking it apart so that it's easier to mix in the glue. So for the glue, I'm going to take off the lid so that I can put enough glue. See, let's see if that was enough. And it's feels good. And then I'm just trying to break them apart a little bit more. So again, at this point, if you're not using glue, if you're just using some flour, you can also just get a bit of this and then sprinkle it in until it starts to squish together really well, like it's doing now. See? So what's the salt for? The salt is just to prevent molds from growing in. So it's not a major ingredient. If you skip it, it's fine. But sometimes paper clay, depending on the project that you're making, might be really a big project, and then it'll take days to dry. And that is the perfect mold growing environment. So the salt would be super helpful. So I'm just gathering all that clay. It's really like making bread. It feels like I'm making bread. It's super fun. Oh my gosh. There. And it's sticking together so nicely. So, if you wanted your paper clay to not be as clumpy, while it had the water in, you could have also passed it into a blender if you've got one, or a hand mixer. But I wanted to do our activity today as simply as possible, without all of those fancy tools, so that you can see that even if you have very little setup at home, you can do it by yourself. You can make magical things out of everyday recyclables. We're almost done. So let's give it a test. So it looks really nice. When I push at it, it doesn't bounce back, which means I can actually start to form it. So I'm going to take a bit of clay, and then let's see, can I roll it into a cute little ball? Yes, I can. So paper clay, when you allow it to dry, it can dry rock hard. You know, you can sand it also if you want it to be smoother. You can drill holes in them and make them into beads. Or you can also paint on it. Let's see if I can make this circle ball into a cube. So I'm pressing down on 6 sides and just turning. Maybe I can make a little dice for a game. There. Cool. So it can take different forms. Let's see. I can also roll one side and make like a little cone. See, I'm rolling it against the palm of my hand. And we can make a little cone. There. So now let's gather it into a nice neat ball. And I'm going to put it into a resealable container so that it can be stored in the fridge. This one though, we will send to teacher Robert. So this is a really good activity. This paper clay recipe will last a couple of weeks, and I hope you have fun with it. Thank you, iShiners and iShine parents, for joining me in today's art adventure. Today we made our own paper clay so that we also get to express ourselves in 3D and not feel so limited by the flat sheet of paper. Also, we learned how to substitute different ingredients so that we don't feel limited by what we already have. I'm so happy to have been able to share this activity with you, and I'm looking forward to seeing all of your own art adventures at home. Do share the videos and photos online with the hashtags #NurtureTheGift and PROMIL4iShine. Don't forget to catch Teacher Robert's video, which is coming up soon, so we learn different ways to express ourselves in 3D with the paper clay that we learned how to make today. I'm so excited to see you on our next video, and thank you so much for joining me today. Till next time!